and welcome to this month's episode of Cooking Through the Calendar. My name is Olivia Ferris, and I'm the Lawrence County Extension Agent for Family and Consumer Sciences for the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service. So, our recipe today is the February recipe from the nutrition calendar that our extension offices give out across the state. Easy Peasy Mac and Cheesey is the name of this recipe, and it really is easy. It's less than 10 ingredients. They're all budget friendly and actually are going to help us reach our health goals because it's low in sodium, it's low in fat, very high in protein, good sources of fiber. So it's a really easy recipe that's a good way to add in some nutrition to your family meals or for your meals as an individual. So the first thing that I did before we even began today was wash my hands, okay? Wash them very thoroughly, wash not only my palms, but I got between my fingers, on the top of my hand, and I washed it for the amount of time that it takes to sing the ABC song twice, or a little over 20 seconds. So I washed my hands. We're starting with a clean countertop. All my dishes have been done, so we're starting from a really sanitary place. The first thing that you're going to want to do is get some hot water going because we're going to be boiling some pasta. So before we even began, I went ahead and got a pot of water started, so that way we didn't have to sit and watch water boil. It might not have ever boiled if we were all watching it at the same time. So I went ahead and got a pot of water started. You can maybe see some of the steam coming up on the camera. So it is boiling now, so that way I can add my pasta. So I'm going to go ahead and add that now. I'm starting with 16 ounces of elbow pasta. So this recipe actually calls for whole wheat pasta. And my grocery store does not carry whole wheat shell or elbow macaroni. So I looked for another option. They actually had an option for me to use chickpea macaroni, and I'll show that now. As you can tell, you really can't see a large difference between this and wheat or white pasta. So I'm going to add that to my water now. I want to caution you when you're adding something to water to be very careful because it could splash back and hot water hit you or somebody that's cooking with you, and we don't want that. We want to be safe in the kitchen. So I'm adding that now. It's 16 ounces of chickpea pasta, even though this recipe calls for wheat. So you're going to want to follow the instructions of the box of pasta that you purchased. So mine says to boil this for 6 to 7 minutes, which is pretty standard for a lot of pasta, but if yours says 8 or 9 or maybe even 5 minutes, keep an eye out for that. So just boil the pasta for the amount of time that it says on the package that you purchased. So this pasta is going to cook for 6 to 7 minutes, but we're going to go on and go into the next part of the recipe. I am going to give it a quick stir though, so that way the macaroni doesn't start to clump together. Now, you might notice that I have a cutting board here. Well, this recipe doesn't call for any cutting. I just really like to have something to set my spoons on other than the countertop. So I just take my cutting board that I use for vegetables and put my different tools on there. So that's just a quick tip for you. The next thing that the recipe wants us to do is to warm up our milk, okay? It wants us to warm it, to heat it. It does not want us to bring it to a boil. So I did wait for the pasta water to get nice rolling boil so that way my pasta cooks properly. However, I don't want this milk to get to a nice rolling boil, so we're not going to do that. We're just going to simply warm up the milk. Now, this is just one can. It's 12 ounces. I just went ahead and poured it in here. And this is actually low-fat evaporated milk, okay? You can get the low-fat option. There's actually non-fat options at some stores, but this is the low-fat evaporated milk. And I just went ahead and poured it into a measuring cup just so you could see that it was 12 ounces, but it comes in a 12-ounce can. I do want to caution you, though, that maybe there might be an 8-ounce can, or even in some cases I've seen little 4-ounce cans of this kind of milk. So make sure that you're getting the proper 12 ounces. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to my saucepan now. I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this on now. And I just have it on a medium heat like I do my pasta. So we're waiting for that to get warm. I thought I would go ahead and go through some of the ingredients and some of the tools that you're going to need for this recipe. So we've already talked about needing 16 ounces of a whole wheat pasta. Again, I'm using chickpea, but use what you have. We do want to make it our goal to get half our grains to be whole grains throughout the day when we're eating. So if you can get that whole grain, that's excellent. If that's a little bit out of your price range or your budget, there's other alternative options like chickpea and lentil. And then if you're really strapped, you can make other substitutions elsewhere. So we also need one 12-ounce can of the non-fat evaporated or low-fat evaporated milk. I've already got that going. We're trying to get that warm now. But a new ingredient that I haven't discussed yet is one 8-ounce package of mild or sharp shredded cheese. So I just got the finely shredded. You could get the thick cut, you can get sharp, you can get mild. But you're going to want 8 ounces, and most packages typically come in 8-ounce containers. The regular size ones, I know they have jumbo ones, so kind of keep an eye out for that as well. You're going to need 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. I'll show that to you now. I do want to caution you, there's something called garlic salt, and there's also garlic powder. They're really easy to get mixed up because they look exactly the same, but you're wanting to get a garlic powder. Why is that? Well, garlic powder doesn't have all the extra salt added into it, so it's not going to have a lot of sodium. And we really want to be careful looking at our sugars, our fats, and our salts, or our sodium. So really make sure you're checking those labels. Garlic powder is fairly cheap. It's the same price as garlic salt typically, so keep an eye out for that. Because we're going to actually add a little bit of salt to this recipe, and if you're adding your garlic salt and salt on top of that, you're going to have some really salty mac and cheese. So keep an eye out for that. The next thing I want to discuss is our 1 tablespoon of celery seed, and it looks like that. Our celery seed is also a culprit for sodium, so they have celery salt and they have celery seed. So really make sure you're looking at those labels and getting the celery seed and not the celery salt. It can be a little tricky, and it's designed that way actually, so make sure you're getting those lower sodium, no salt options. This is really going to promote a heart-healthy diet overall if you're really making those substitutions between sodium and not sodium. Okay, we are adding a little bit of salt to this, so I have half a teaspoon of salt. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but look at how much salt that is. That's actually quite a bit. Okay, and we also have a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. I wanted to add in here that if you wanted it to taste a little bit more garlicky, or you wanted a little bit more of that celery seed, or even a little bit more of your black pepper, that's totally great. That's not going to change a lot of like the caloric intake. That's not going to change the sodium or the sugar or things like that. But be really careful with that salt shaker because it's just so easy to turn it upside down on your plate and add a whole bunch of sodium that you didn't even realize that you were going to be consuming. So just keep an eye out for that. We're also going to need a can of peas, and I got the peas that have no sodium. So I'm pretty sure this recipe calls for low sodium, but you can actually, or low salt, or no salt. But you can actually get peas with no salt added at all. And actually, that was very easy for me to find. They actually had the store brand with no salt, so I was able to purchase that, which is usually a cheaper option. So I opted to get the no salt peas. Again, if that's not an option for you, try to look for those low sodium options. So there might be just a 50% less sodium, and that would also be great. You're also going to need some tuna. So there's that, and this is tuna in its own water. And that's really important to look for because sometimes they put different juices and different sodium and things like that. So look for water-packed tuna. You want to drain this, and you need a 5-ounce can. So just 5 ounces of tuna. If you're not a tuna person, something you could opt to do here is maybe some chicken in a can that's in water. So that's another great option. Tuna, though, has a lot of really good like fatty acids and some things like that we're going to need, and it's a good source of protein. So again, that's a substitution you can make, or you can just follow the recipe exactly as it is. So it feels like our milk, I just kind of hovered my hand over it, is starting to get warm, but it hasn't boiled at all yet. That's great. We don't want that to happen. I am going to stir our pasta right fast. I don't want it to get all clumped together. And you do have to watch that sometimes with chickpea because it's a little bit softer than the wheat pasta. Okay. Now it looks like there are a few bubbles starting to form around the outside of my milk. So now that we've talked about all the ingredients, I'm going to talk about a few of the tools you're going to need, and then we're going to head on into the recipe because I think our milk is about ready. So you're going to need a large bowl to stir at the end. You're going to need a colander to drain your pasta. Of course, you need 2 pots or a saucepan, and I have a large pot here for my pasta. You want some kind of spoon or ladle because we're going to have to put some pasta water aside later in this recipe, and this is a really handy way to really transport that water safely. I have a liquid measuring cup because I need half a cup of the water from the pasta, and I want to make sure I get the proper amount. And then something to stir with, I'm using these great rubber spatulas that the nutrition education program gives out at their programs at our office, and I'm just using that to stir. So I've got a few little bubbles around the outside of my milk that's telling me that it's warm, and I really don't want it to get to that boiling point. So we're going to go ahead and add in those 8 ounces of the finely shredded cheese now. And I just do a little bit at a time. Kind of stir, add in a little bit more, and stir. And this is going to make our sauce. So I'm wanting to stir this kind of continuously. We don't want that cheese to burn, because who wants mac and cheese with burnt cheese? I know I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and stir in this, and it's actually started to melt. So you're just going to stir this until the cheese is completely melted. I'm going to go ahead and drain my pasta now because it's ready to go. Okay everyone, so we've moved locations. Now we're close to the sink because I'm about to drain my pasta. But the first thing I want to do is get half a cup of the pasta water to add to my mac and cheese in case the cheese and milk mixture is a little bit too thick. So I have a ladle here that holds half a cup. So I know I need one of these. However, if you do not have a ladle that's exactly half a cup, you can just get out your handy dandy liquid measuring cup and spoon water into it until you reach that half cup. So I just need 1 ladle scoopful. And one thing I like about this ladle is it has those little ends on it, so it makes it nice and easy to pour. Okay, so I have my half a cup. I'm going to double check. When you're looking at a liquid measuring cup, it's good to get down at eye level and to squat down and make sure that the bottom of the U shape is where we're measuring from on that line. So that the bottom of that U is what we're looking at, and it looks like it's right at half a cup. So that's the perfect amount for us to save to use in our recipe in a little bit. So now I'm going to actually drain all of my pasta. So when I drain my pasta, I like to go ahead and have my colander down in this sink, and I just pour my water in slowly. You want to look out for that steam. You don't want it to hit you in the face or in the eyes because that'll burn. So I'm just going to pour my pasta in now. Now, we've drained our pasta, and I've kind of changed up our setup here. So I have a bowl ready because I'm getting ready to combine some more ingredients. I have my pasta setting to the side here, and this is just one of my little tricks that I do. I put my vegetable cutting board under the colander so water doesn't drip everywhere, and after I thoroughly let my pasta drain, I just transferred it over here so that way it's more convenient and we don't have as many dishes and going to the sink and coming over here just to combine our few ingredients that are left. So I have my pasta ready to go. The cheese is nice and warm. It has come to like a really nice and thick consistency. I might need to add a little bit of that pasta water that we saved, but it's looking really great. So now let's go on and add in our other ingredients. So the first thing I'm going to add in is that garlic, and I'm just going to sprinkle it in and give it a quick stir. Now my cheese has started to boil a little bit, so I'm going to turn that heat down just so slightly. Okay, Now that I've got the garlic kind of stirred or folded in there, I'm going to add my celery seed. Give it a quick stir. Now I'm going to add my pepper, that 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. You can add a little bit more if you like. And then of course that 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I'm just going to combine all those ingredients into our cheese mixture. So it went from looking like a very traditional cheese mixture, very golden, you could see the cheese melting, and now it looks kind of like a gourmet cheese mixture with our celery seed in there and our pepper. I'll hold that up to camera so you can kind of see. Okay, now that we have all of our ingredients combined in the cheese, I'm going to go ahead and add our macaroni to my larger mixing bowl. It's kind of gotten stuck together, but that's okay. Once we start adding in more ingredients, it'll loosen up. I'm going to add in my peas. Remember, you've drained your peas and your tuna already. Now I'm going to add my tuna. And once I took this out of the can, I kind of took like a butter knife and poked around and tried to loosen it up so that way the tuna would be more evenly distributed throughout our easy peasy mac and cheesy. Okay, and now that I've got the tuna in there, there's a little bit more in the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and scrape that. Now normally I wouldn't be taking my spoon with my meat if it was raw meat, but this is tuna in a can, it's already been prepared, and we're going to add our cheese in anyway. Okay, now I'm going to add the cheese. It is a little thick, so I'm going to pour a little bit of our water in. And if yours is super, super thick, you can use the whole thing. It looks like I used just a little bit, maybe a few tablespoons. And now my cheese is much looser and it's going to go over the mac and cheese and peas a lot better. I'm just going to pour that in my bowl. And I just cascade it around just to get it all over. Get all of it out of there. And so now I'm just going to stir and combine the ingredients. And it's that easy, it'll be ready to serve. Now that we've combined the peas and the cheese and the macaroni and the tuna, our meal is ready to serve. Whether it's going to be a side dish for a well-balanced meal or it's actually going to be the main course, it's something that you can really enjoy knowing that it's low in salt, sugar, and fat, which are things that we look for when we're planning a well-balanced meal. So now that it's hot and ready to serve, I've already scooped some out for myself. This is a meal that's going to be really good for fiber, it's really high in protein, and it's actually pretty low in calories, and it's within budget. So it's something really simple you can do with less than 10 ingredients that can be a great main dish or even a side dish for whatever meal you're planning. We hope you learned something today, and we can't wait to see you back here next time for Cooking Through the Calendar. Until then, I'm Olivia Ferris. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.